which is the series of submissions around the bringing forward of the appointment of a additional member for the land management team to meet the demand around the implementation of Plan Change 6. The officer's report is on page 25. You can see the summary of submissions on pages 23 and 24. Are there any questions?
Any comments from Mr. Eadie?
No, there was pretty good support for this, I thought, yeah, in general, and well, some of the key comments that I picked up from submitters were it's a core function of council. Basically, get on with it. Really.
Councillor Scott.
Over and above the comments that the officer's report has here, Mr. Chairman, is it correct to say that this is actually needed to meet the implementation of Plan Change 6? So it's not just a vote on numbers, given however many, well, few people actually responded out of 65,000 ratepayers, but it is actually, the evidence is there that we need this, which is why it was put there?
We need at least this.
Yeah, thank you.
You happy to move? Move which way, Councillor Dick? Accept option B?
I'll second that.
You happy to second that? You wish to speak to it, Councillor Dick? Councillor Barker? Other speakers? Put that motion and all those in favour please say aye. Contrary no. Next page.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Across the page 27, 28 and 29. These are the submissions around the I guess the fit for purpose, the upgrade to technology. That was put out there as an option, which was for, I think it was, I can't remember now, I haven't got it in front of me, $175,000 or $275,000 extra in the budget. Mr. Drury's not here to answer any questions on that, but if there are, between the rest of us, we'll try and answer them.
I'll move it.
Happy to move, happy to second. Move.
I moved.
Move option B that we become a fit for purpose regional council. So wish to speak to that?
Sure do. We had a presentation on this as to what was going to happen. I was just like to say that I was a bit disappointed, most probably, in the way that this was portrayed in the documentation that went out for consultation. I think it was confusing for a lot of people as to what was being asked for, and I don't think there was an understanding of exactly what it was all about. I mean, it's difficult enough sometimes when you're talking about these technical matters, but in the presentation that was given to us, it seemed very clear that this was the way forward, and we had to go this way on using this particular platform. So I support it, but once again, just making the note that I didn't think that the consultation document explained it well enough for the public to understand.
Seconder.
Again, Mr. Chairman, the evidence that supports the need to do this, especially with the cybersecurity and the loss of business that can occur through a breakdown through the system, has made it absolutely imperative that we move on this. And it is pleasing to see that there was considerable support for it. But I would echo the words that there was quite a bit of misunderstanding as to really what it meant as well.
Other speakers? Put the motion. All those in favour please say aye. Contrary no.
Mr. Chairman, if we leave the one on rates until right at the end, yes. The next bit, you've already made a decision around the Business Hawke's Bay funding, which was no increase, and then the submissions that have been presented from Hawke's Bay Tourism.
Sorry, I was just going to say, before you left that, I'm happy to move they change the plan.
Yeah, which is what they've asked for. They've just supported what's already been proposed in the LTP.
So no change to the plan for Hawke's Bay Tourism. We have a seconder for that. You have to second that. You wish to speak to that, Councillor Scott?
Mr. Chairman, we canvassed this extensively actually in the LTP, and there was considerable support for that funding. This is as established under the LTP, and there was the only submissions on this was in support of that funding as per the LTP, so it is no change in the plan. The other thing is we didn't actually go out and consult on any reduced funding, so I think it would be inappropriate to try and impose that on now.
Yes, can I just follow up from that? The strategic plan was presented to council here, KPIs were set in place, and indeed if this council wants those KPIs to be reached and exceeded, then the funding needs to be there to do that. Cutting back on any sort of funding would be, in my view anyway, a retrograde step. It would actually put them at a disadvantage and not be able to complete their KPIs. At the present time, of course, we're just coming out of what has been an absolutely fantastic tourism season, and you'll be getting, no doubt, a report on that when they come here next time.
Other speakers? Put the motion, and all those in favour please say aye. Contrary, no. Carried. We're going to miscellaneous submission
Page
points raised.
57, thank you, Mr Chairman. So now we move into a number of submission points that we received that weren't specifically tied to any one of the previous headings that we've consulted on. So the first of those is on page 59, and this is, the first of those is submission number 8 from Upstream Wairoa. Might ask Mr Adey to comment on that.
Yes, we've indicated to them in the past that happy to support an ongoing program of enhancement of the river edge, but we see our role as really associated with strictly the river edge, and leave to Wairoa District the sort of wider what would you call it, reserve land in the vicinity of the river. So I thought that was pretty well accepted, and we're really keen to work with them. It would be nice to have a proactive arrangement rather than one that was driven by the sea from this end. But
So, any other questions on that? No change in the plan. Happy to second that. Wish to speak, Councillor Scott?
I think Mr Adey's said it all, Mr Chairman.
He has stolen our thunder. I'll put the motion, and all those in favour please say aye. Contrary, no. Carried. Gillian Wilton, Seascape Environment Society.
Mr Chairman, I'd move no change in the plan, but advise the submitter that that HBRC, the matter's been referred to HBRC for them to deal with as the owner of the port.
Someone going to second that?
Yeah, I'll second that.
You happy to second that?
Yeah.
Wish to speak, Councillor?
All right. Well, it's a long-standing complaint. And I did ask Andrew Newman a couple of weeks didn't happen until I grabbed him by the arm this morning when Bruce Wilton was here and put the two of them together, so process is underway.
Okay, seconder. Councillor Scott.
Mr Chairman, we did have some agreed process that the Napier councillors would continue to advocate between Napier City and the port, and I'm rather sad to see that this motion actually hands all responsibility out of councillors' hands to see the matter through. So I won't vote the motion down, but I do feel that it doesn't pick up the spirit of what was agreed on the annual plan meeting when it was discussed a way forward with the submitters.
Thank you. Put that motion and all
Well,
that. Oh, you wish to sum? Yep, sorry.
I wouldn't agree with that comment. It's a matter of getting something done and not just sitting around and continuing to navel gaze and let things like this grow as an irritant. So it's now in the hands of someone who can sort something out with the port. You know, we don't have the ability or shouldn't be going directly to the port ourselves. That's all.
Thank you. Put the motion, then all those in favour please say aye. Contrary, no. Carried. Thank you. Next one then is Mr Apted, Ormley Chalet Group, the water science charges.
I do have a question around this, and this is where we've really come into a really bad position with deciding on this plan with senior staff
Not
not
here,
here to
I know.
answer the questions. And I would like to know how the index is actually sourced and you know, why, given that the effects are probably better controlled this way than other, that we're penalising one particular.
We'll get Mr Heaney down, we'll move on to the next one. He
Thank
may
you.
be able to help us. So we've got sub 15, Mr Paul Bailey, climate change.
Mr Chairman, just a comment here. I'm not clear what was specifically sought in the annual plan. So it was difficult to be able to make any recommendation on this.
Mr Chairman, I move no change in plan.
Seconder for that.
I will second that.
You happy to second that? Wish to speak, Councillor Scott?
Council is doing a considerable amount across a number of areas to help the various communities become more resilient to climate change. There is a proposal in front of us that we've yet to consider about environmental flows in the Tuki. There is the hill country erosion. There is the coastal strategy to try and get a more resilient community response to the pressures on the coast. There is, right throughout our entire program and functions, continual adaptation to climate change, plus what we can do to make this community a better place, like retiring steep hill country and planting it. So, you know, some of them are really positive moves to assist with the community response to climate change. I'm not sure what the submitters want to, except that he can't have read the plan well enough to actually discover how much is in there.
Yeah, I just think the staff response on the on the electric vehicles was an appropriate one, given that, you know, most of our vehicles are 4x4s, four-wheel drives. When technology gets to the stage where it's producing that, then that'd be fantastic for us to go that way. But otherwise, in the meantime, no.
I do note with electric vehicles, Hastings is going, I think, AC and Napier's going DC. So.
No surprise there.
Apparently that is exactly right. I was talking to Unison about it. Anyway, Councillor Bevan, you wish to speak?
Yes, I do. I think the submitter can perhaps be excused for not finding the rather scattered references to climate change and our response to it in the annual plan. It's not an easy document to navigate, but we all know that a lot is going on, and as you all know, Councillor Scott and myself are pretty heavily involved in it. So I was slightly surprised by the questioning that the submitters made, and I will take the opportunity to talk to him about exactly what's going on the next time I see him.
AC or DC? Mover wish to sum up? Put the motion. All those in favour, please say contrary, no. Carried.
Go back to the submission 14.
Mr Heaney is here. Very good. So your question, Councillor Scott, in regard to water science charges?
I'm hoping, Mr Heaney, that you have read this submission and can tell us why their pollution index is what it is, compared with the fact that we have said there is very little impact of individual ones. So, having read their submission, can you justify why we are charging what we are charging for this particular service, which is replacing an old septic tank they were part of, instead of putting in 4 individuals, putting in 1 between them.
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
I too have some sympathy for the way in which the submission was made. And Mr. Apted was making a point of principle. I think that there was no difference in the discharge from his 4 properties into 1 outlet compared with 4 separate outlets. But the fact of the matter is that our rules state at the moment that discharges from dwellings, single dwellings, are exempt from Section 36 charges, whereas multiple users of 1 discharge point are not. So it's the way that the rules were written. In terms of the pollution index, in question of that, then the pollution index is a weighting that is given against the amount of discharge according to the level of impact on the environment of that discharge. So my thinking is that if you have 4 into 1 discharge, that is greater than 1 into 1. There are 39 similar consents for discharges multiple into a single system.
Can I just ask a question? By
Yeah.
multiple, you mean more than 1?
Yes. Yep.
Sorry, can I just
And-
ask
and
you the
they-
question? Are they dwellings or are they other types of
Well, I was
operations?
going to go on to that if I may, Councillor Bright. These similar consents are mostly commercial, social clubs, Marai ablution blocks, but there are dwelling ones in there as well. Now, what I did was to look at this and say, well, first of all, are there any similar submissions from these other parties? And the answer is no, there aren't. What would be the impact on this if we didn't charge for these multiple dwelling examples, of which there are 39? We would have $26,000 of non-recoverable money from the Section 36 pot. Now, equating that, and if you spread it across everybody, and you remember we had this debate about a general charge or a zone charge, if it went across on the general rate, the equivalent to get back that 27,000 would be an extra 45 cents on the rate. Remember that the general ratepayer is also paying 65% of these charges. The consent holders are paying 35% of it. If it remained as a zone-based charge and we didn't collect from those multiple discharges, there would be a resultant 82% increase in the southern coastal zone, a 10% increase in the Heratonga, and a 6% increase in the Esk for similar consents. Mr. Apted very kindly provided what he believed would be a reasonable solution to this by describing an equivalent, if we could have the equivalent of a residency. My problem with that particular thing, I thank him for his thoughts, but it's subjective. How do you define equivalent? Is it the number of occupants, the number of roofs? Is it the number of toilets? Is it, how do you define that? Whereas 1 dwelling is definitive. The pollution index is reviewed annually to measure that it's a comparative. It's a weighting of how much the impact is. There was a question as well, I think, from you, Mr. Chairman, about whether it was $250 for him or for the whole lot, or was it 1,000, etc. His charges next year between the 4 of them will be $131 each, because it's going down because of the low impact of the Heratonga work. That's a very long answer to a very short question. I apologise.
So there is a positive movement,
Yes.
from his point of view, in the costing of this.
Yep. I don't know. I went and talked to him on the way out when he left. I explained to him about the different types of consents. He was reasonably happy with that, and also stated, which I thought was interesting, the other 3 aren't bothered, but they said give it a go.
Does he pay a compliance charge as well under
Compliance
exercising
charge.
the consent? We did rationalise that some years ago, and I've got an idea that there is a...
There's a water
Fixed charge
use
of
compliance charge.
That was a fixed charge of $90.
Yep. which is different to the Section 36 charge.
So he pays, in
Yes.
total it'll be
Yep.
330 per
Yep.
person
Yep.
for operating the system. Thank you.
Yep.
I think
His
councillor,
alternative, of course, is to put in 3 new systems.
Well,
Councillor
that comes to my question. What I felt really uneasy about this in that I couldn't, just get me this right, if they each put their own system in, 4 houses in a row, be no charge,
No Section 36 charge.
no Section 36 charge. So they do it collaboratively, and 4 of them put together, there is a Section 36 charge. And I was struggling to find in my head a public policy, justification for this. I mean, we can have the rules are this, the rules are that, but that's not a policy position. And I just for the life of me couldn't figure out what it would be. What would be the justification for charging people who work collaboratively a charge, whereas they did it singly, no charge. So could I hear it?
I think the anomaly is, as you're absolutely saying, the outputs in terms of discharge are the same. You've got 4 houses. If they were doing it individually, it's no different to a collective going into one outlet, except that the one outlet is 4 times as much as a single dwelling.
I get that, but
Yeah.
but divided by, but the thing is, why? But my question was, what is the public policy justification for charging people who do it collaboratively, 4 of them, a charge, but if the 4 people do it individually, no charge? That's what I want to hear. I
It's
can't.
deemed to have a higher impact if they're doing it collectively.
it is what it is, yeah.
Well, I'm not happy with that. I just think there's an issue here. What do you think?
No, is there a second? We'll get to that comment shortly. You're happy to second that? You wish to speak, Councillor Scott?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chairman. I would like to thank Mr. Heaney for a very clear analysis of this. There did seem to be an anomaly here, but we would have to repeat that over every single multiple dwelling to be fair to everybody. And that's going to have an enormous impact on the plan. It is going to have a rates implication. So if there does seem to be an anomaly, we need to have a look at our policy on that, and there is a policy, and that is that single dwellings are not charged, and this was set when we did the Section 36 charges, we set these policies. So it would actually need us to go back and change that policy to have a look at what we describe as a multiple dwelling, if we feel there is an anomaly.
Well, I'm going to vote against against this, because I do think it's worthwhile going back and checking to see that we've got it right. And that I agree with Councillor Scott. If we made a decision on that basis at the beginning, well, that's fair enough, but it doesn't mean to say we can't change our mind. And for my position here, I cannot see why we should charge people who do things collaboratively 4 together, make a charge on them, but if they do it 4 singly, no charge. I just don't get that. I can't find something that says to me this is justifiable, and I remain of that view.
Thank you. Other speakers, Councillor Grant?
I have no desire to have this linger out, but I really enjoyed that chap come in, and his submission was out of frustration, really. And it just might help if someone like yourself goes and talks to him and sit down in his kitchen with him and his wife and talk through this, because I'm rather in Councillor Barker's thing. I mean, CapEx wise, so it's probably they've made a big saving. So generally in the use of resources, they've made a big saving, but because they've done that and they've collaborated, they're being penalised. It just doesn't seem right. And that's what he's feeling. He only came here out of frustration.
Wish to sum up?
I would sum up, Mr. Chairman, in that there is, and this has been borne out, that there is an impact of the discharge. It's gone from 4 discharges to 1, and therefore it has a greater impact. And so that's where you'd need to be looking at, as to where you consider that impact if you were to look at a policy change.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table, moved and seconded. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. And contrary, no. Carried.